Alright, so we're going to begin a new Siman, Siman Pechet, Halacha Basar בחלב. We have here this Siman and the following Siman dealing with Archakot. Archakot means to keep distance. Chachamim were concerned that the Isser of Basar בחלב, because of its severity, people may make the mistake of eating them together, even though eating in itself is not an Isur Midoraita. It's only Midrabanan, because it was said that Bishul is the main Isur, and even the Isur of Achila is only after it has been cooked together. Still, as the Mishnah quotes, and I'm going to read the Mishnah, Kol Basar asur levashel b'chalav. Here the Mishnah is already including the opinion of Bet Hillel, which is in the latter part of the Mishnah, or in the second Mishnah, which means that it's also, by rabbinical decree, including, Kol Basar includes Basar off, that is prohibited to cook with milk, meaning that there are some that are prohibited to cook midoraisa, and some that are prohibited midrabanan. Kol HaBasar comes to exclude chutz mi basar dagim v'chagavim. Obviously fish and locusts are not included in the prohibition, even though we don't cook fish with milk for other reasons. Then the Mishnah adds, Vasur leha'aloto ima gevina ala shulchan, chutz mi basar dagim v'chagavim. And that's what this siman is all about, is this statement that you can not only can you cook them, neither can you place on the same table cheese and meat. Now what's interesting, as the Aruch HaShulchan will point out, we'll go into that soon, for some reason the Mishnah says you cannot put cheese with meat on the same table, and it does not say milk. It starts out by explaining you cannot cook the two, and it uses milk, but when it talks about putting the two on the table, it uses cheese versus milk. And the Aruch HaShulchan has a very interesting diuk as to why the Mishnah used gvina here instead of chalav. But anyway, that's the first part of the Mishnah. The second Mishnah, or the latter part of this Mishnah, is that ha'of olei magvina la shulchan v'no nechal, that chicken supposedly would be okay to place at the same table as cheese, but cannot be eaten. Divrei Beit Shammai. That's the opinion of Beit Shammai, and this is actually one of the kulot of Beit Shammai. Usually Beit Shammai is stricter. This is one of the leniency. Bet Hillel is the one that's being strict. Bet Hillel omrim lo ole velo nechal. Neither can you put them on the table, neither can you have them together. So as I explained, the first part of the Mishnah is basically going according to Bet Hillel, in including, if you wanted to say it that way, including the halacha that all meat means also chicken cannot be placed at the table together with milk. And that's the halacha as it reads in the Mechaber, quoting from the Torah and the Rambam. Shelo la'alot basar ala shulchan she'ochlim gvina, not to put meat at the same table we're having pizza, right? Gvina, cheese. Afilu basar chaya ve'of, the Mechaber says, asur la'aloto al shulchan she'ochlim gvina. Even the meat of a chaya and an off, even that which is midrabanan, in other words, cannot be put on the table that one is eating. Why? So the Mechaber just says, shelo yavo le'ochlam yachad. So you should not come to eat them. So it's an archaka. This halacha is really, it's not a problem. We're not doing anything wrong by putting them on the same table. But it's an archaka, meaning that we want to prevent anything from ever happening. It's a measure, a preventive measure, to avoid the mistake that may occur. And obviously we're only human and we make mistakes, things occur, and that's why the Chachamim understood that this is a necessity, right? As we say in Pirkei Avot, "V'asu siag," make a siag, make a fence. The Chachamim were given the authority, the samchut, to erect or to enact decrees, to erect fences around the Torah to prevent one from actually breaking the real mitzvah, the real Isser. As to what is the exact problem of putting the two on the table, we have various opinions explaining the issue. We have Rashi. If you look at Rashi, literally Rashi explaining this part of the Mishnah in Maseches Chulin, Perek Shmini, Kol Basar, Daf Kuf Gimel Omid Beis and Kuf Dalet, the Gemara. He points out that the main issue here, the main problem of putting Basar and Gvina, is that you may come to eat from the two together because they will be touching each other. they will be actually touching each other, rubbing against each other, and absorbing from each other. And because of this mixture of sorts that may occur on the table, even though it's tzoinen, even though it's cold, and there's no issue to begin with, nevertheless, it's a gzera. Okay? In other words, that one should not come to eat the two together. So by having them in close proximity to each other, Rashi holds that is the problem here, that you may come to eat from the two of them, somehow. The Ran holds that the main problem over here is that you may come to eat from the two together. And he's referring to gvina with basar. He's not even talking about chicken right now. He's talking about the main problem is that you may come to eat gvina in basar, and not chicken, necessarily. All right. So he doesn't talk about necessarily the mixture, the rubbing against each other, absorbing the gvina into the basar or the other way around. He's talking about the fact that having them on the table, you may come to eat from the two of them. That's all. Whereas Rashi is pointing more to the possibility of them being close to each other and therefore absorbing from each other, which is also a problem, of course. If you eat one, you're eating the other one, because they have absorbed from each other. The Rashba really talks more about the ultimate problem. The ultimate problem, as it's later elaborated in the Gemara, is that we're concerned about the end result, the possibility of at some point coming to actually cook the meat with milk in a pot, which is the real Isser of Bishul. In other words, even though we're starting with something that appears to be very simple and very unassuming and not complicated, cheese, meat, chicken, nothing is happening. You're not eating them together. You're hopefully not cooking them together. Why should you? I mean, they're just on the table. No, but one thing leads to another. This idea or this permission, in other words, allowing these things to be very close to each other on the same table, may eventually cause or may bring about the consequence of the real Isser, which the Torah prohibits, and that is cooking them together. As he says, Yesh lochu sheyale be'ilfas roteach. Ilfas is a pot, roteach is a cooking pot, a boiling pot, which is the real Isser. The crazy place he explains that this is, of course, going according to Rav Yosef, that holds the way it's indicated here in the Rashba, that this is going according to Rav Yosef, who holds that off bechalav is doraita, and therefore there's no gzera legzera over here. It's actually one gzera. As we're going to see, we have a problem over here. How do we we never usually allow for a gzera to a gzera, a double gzera. We usually don't do that. So here, if you learn like Rav Yosef, who's the one that holds, he's of the opinion that off is achilat of bechalav is deoraita too, then you don't have that problem.
If Rav Yosef to say
in
that
the
off bechalav can be right.
Yeah,
That
was his understanding.
Yeah, but it's not svara.
Yeah, we don't hold like that. We don't. Yeah. We don't hold like that. But there was a community in Bavel that followed that opinion, but we don't hold like that. So that's the way it is understood, that part of the Gemara is understood that according to Rav Yosef, this would be the issue. In other words,
Do we know it's a very interesting question?
Yeah.
Why?
Yeah. Right. That was what they took upon themselves in that community. As to how it originated, I don't recall right now. All I know is that they.
The Mishnah says kol habasar. The Mishnah, kol habasar, shall that gam off. So we can, that's midoraita, but fine.
No. It's not exact. It's not very, very clear. I mean, kol habasar is actually the words of the Mishnah, but we are medayek from the pasuk. We have many diukim and drashot. Lo tevashel gdi b'chalev imo. That it comes. There's various things that pasuk comes to exclude. Yeah, but obviously he doesn't learn those drashot. That was the opinion of the majority, of course, and that is how we hold. But somehow he had a different way of learning it. Anyway, I'll see if I see something. I'll let you know. Did you say you were looking for it too? For the time, for the.
No, I didn't find what was the hava mina from Yosef.
Yeah.
I understand that he thinks that therefore it's kol habasar.
Yeah.
Everything of
Right.
From what the Tanaim say.
He inferred it, obviously. He inferred it, but where exactly the Makor, I don't recall now. Yeah. All right. So anyway, but that was based on what Rav Yosef's opinion would be. On the other hand, we have Abaye. According to Abaye, you would have Gzerah of ha'ala'a atu achila. In other words, that we are gozer not to put it on the table, atu, where it may lead to achila. Even though the holy Isur is the Rabbanan, in this particular example, case, this would be an exception where we would be gozer even in the Isur the Rabbanan. And as I'll explain soon, even though this is a Gezerah, in this case, it will be so. In other words, this will be an exception. What would be the nafkamina? This is very interesting. What would be the nafkamina between the various explanations that we gave as to what the problem is of putting the two on the same table? A good nafkamina, which the Aruch HaShulchan actually mentions, would be if you don't have cheese, but you have a glass of milk or a bottle of milk at the same table as the meat. Would that still be a problem? According to Rashi, no. According to Rashi, that the whole problem was that they may come to rub against each other, to absorb from each other, so you will be eating one or the other, one with the other, right? You don't have that problem when you have a glass of milk or you have a bottle of milk, which is even better. It's closed, the bottle, right? Because it's within a container. According to the Ran, that the whole problem is that you may come to eat the two together at the same time in the same meal. Then it makes no difference if you have a glass or bottle. You may come to, by mistake, you may come to drink, you may come to eat at the same time without realizing it. These things happen. So, according to Rashi, the problem doesn't apply. Only if you actually have cheese. That's what the Aruch HaShulchan says. That's the diuk in the Mishnah between the difference between cheese and milk. It says cheese. So according to Rashi, it's understood very, very well. The problem here is the cheese on the table and not the milk on the table. The cheese is the one that's going to give us a problem if it's close where it may absorb. But if you were to have a bottle of milk, then according to Rashi, you wouldn't have a problem. According to the Ran, you may come to eat the two together, you would always have a problem. Right. Yeah, we'll talk a little bit about that later. Right. So according to the Ran, obviously, it would be always asur. All right, let's see. Now, the Aruch HaShulchan continues to explain as follows. He says that the Rambam, where this halacha is quoted from here in the Mechaber, when he says that it's prohibited to put the two on the table, includes, of course, chicken. And he says that the reason for it is because of hergel avera. Shema yochal ze im ze. Apal pi she'of is an isur d'Rabbanan. In other words, you may come to eat the two together, and therefore because of hergel, in other words, people are accustomed to eat things together. If you put them on the same table, they may not pay that much attention. They may not be focused. They may be on the phone, right? Things can happen. So because of that, one thing leads to another. The Rambam therefore says that the whole gzera is that you may actually come to eat off im chalav. The Rambam therefore says it's not so much a problem of basar, it's a problem even with regular chicken, which is entirely an isur d'Rabbanan. So what's the big deal? It's only an isur d'Rabbanan. Nevertheless, even though the achila of off and even the bishul of off is a d'Rabbanan, it's mipnei hergel. Mipnei hergel avera. In other words, they made a special harchaka. They made a special prohibition to maintain distance from this thing, because these are things that are always around us. It's matsui, it's a davar tmidi, it's constant. We have milk for breakfast, we have milk sometimes as a drink, we have dairy meals occasionally. So because of the constant consumption of certain foods, whether in the same day or in close proximity to each other, there's always that possibility that one can come to eat the two together. Even though the eating together of those two, the off and the chalav, is not a problem, it's a d'Rabbanan, still, here they made an exception. So the Rambam is really telling us a very interesting chidush here, as Aruch HaShulchan points out, that this is an additional chidush in the Mishnah that has nothing to do with the beginning of the Mishnah. In other words, the second part of the Mishnah is this additional detail that only applies to chicken. So besides the prohibition, besides the putting of the meat and cheese on the table, we have an additional Bet Hillel that says you can't have chicken either. Why? Because of an additional reason. It's archaka. It's a special archaka because these things are sometimes close to each other. They're always found, even though it's an Isur D'Rabbanan. The Pashut Pshat is, as we learned, the Pashut Pshat, the simple understanding of this Isur, is, as we said, like the Rashba pretty much points out, that in the end, even though you're starting off with chicken, you may end up cooking meat with milk, which is the ultimate concern, which is really a deoraita. So that's the Pashut Pshat. What the Mishnah is telling us is this may eventually lead to the ultimate. What's the ultimate? The actual cooking of milk with meat. So the chicken by itself is not so much the problem, but it's a gzera.
That is
Yeah.
Because no reason we are not doing gzera. So
Yeah.
bad. We can do in this case.
Right. I'm going to explain that. Yeah.
Because if
Right.
people will do, if heter to this, people will do it with the basar. That
Right.
can be the.
No, we're going to explain how is it. Yeah. How is it that it's a gzera like gzera? We're going to explain that separately. Anyway, the Aruch HaShulchan also adds on his own, in other words, his own opinion, that based on what we just said, that there's a halacha here, it would therefore be also asur, even if it's a tafshil shel basar, even if it's a dish, even if it's not just meat by itself, to have a meat dish, tafshil, with a tafshil shel chalav. In other words, don't think it only has to be basar or of gvina. Even he says, even if it's a tafshil, the same idea or the same isur or the same harchaka would apply. We're concerned that you may come either, as the Ran says, to eat two together, or especially as the Ran says, as you know, obviously if it's a tafshil in a pot or in a plate, it wouldn't have the problem that Rashi said. But either way, it's an archaka that would apply regardless.
Just if it was shul ben yom, yeah? If it was in.
Well, what's the difference if it's ben yom or not?
Tafshil shel basar, not basar.
But it's still basar. If it's a tafshil, it's still. What you talking about ben yom or inna ben yom has to do with the pots. The pot.
Is there no basar there?
Oh no, that's something else. No, we're talking about tafshil, mamash ochel, ma'achal. There's food in the pot.
And there basar in the pot.
Yeah.
So
it's a tafshil. In other words, it's lo chayav liot basar, real meat and real cheese. It could even be something that's mixed with meat. So obviously, it's a meat. It's a meat tafshil. Yeah, right. Yeah, it has some sort of flavor. It has some. Obviously, it's not just that it was cooked in a meat pot.
I think about something.
Yeah.
Not basar, just irakot. That it is ben yom.
Yeah.
We know that the seer is ben yom.
It's not that shouldn't be. That shouldn't. Yeah. But that shouldn't be so much of a problem, as we will eventually learn the din of nat bar nat. In other words, even if it's in a ben yomo, if there's no meat be'en, it shouldn't be that much of a problem.
Just it's not ben yom.
If you cooked rice in a meat pot, yeah, but it's clean, okay? Remember, it's clean. Can you eat rice with? You want to have some mozzarella cheese at the same time. You're eating the rice. What would be the problem? What would be the problem? Huh? Yeah.
If it's not ben yom, there's no problem.
No, well, obviously, if it's not ben yom, it's not a problem.
No. The problem would be the taste that goes from the pot into rice.
Right.
It's ben yom.
Yeah.
If it's not ben yom,
Obviously,
Ben Yom, we're talking about Ben
Well,
Yom.
only ben yom is a potential problem, but it still wouldn't be a problem. That's the whole idea behind nat bar nat. Yeah, it's not. I mean, if it's not an isur ba'en, it's an isur balua in the pot. It's still. I mean, that leads to a different kind of problem here. There's a difference between Ashkenazim and Sfaradim. In that, sure, yeah. You want to eat now. You want to have a glass of milk with the rice that you just cooked in a pot that was meat, meat pot. What?
No.
What's one nut?
The wall of the pot gives taste of but not.
Well, in the case where you obviously
If you then put in another pot, it becomes not.
no. It all depends what was being cooked in the pot. Yeah.
So now the walls of the meat
And into the rice.
Into the rice.
the walls of the meat. So it's one not in time.
It goes from the pot into the
now
rice.
The rice is something else. It's not
Right, exactly. So I'm saying, it all depends how you're going to eat it. Yes. I mean, we're not going to put the cheese on top of the rice, obviously, right? But the question is, can you have a glass of milk right now with the rice? Yes, go ahead. Right. Go ahead. Sure.
To the walls of the pot is 1 knot, wall to the rice is 2 knots.
Right. Yes. That's it.
Once it comes out of the wall.
Some require, by the way, a liquid. It's a machloket. That it goes from the pot into the liquid, from the liquid into the gush. Yeah. In the nat banat, what is nat banat is also various opinions and how nat banat come out.
Right.
Yeah.
But ultimately, the nat banat means that it starts out and not physical.
Right.
Not the actual presence of it. It starts out as a taste.
Correct. Yeah.
Is absorbed by something. And then whoever absorbed this taste gives it off to something else.
Yes, that's one possibility.
And this taste that's not being given over a second time is now the nat banat.
Right.
It's the second generation.
Anyway, so we will see that would be that would be an issue concerning somebody cooking something parve in a pot, whether he can have milk with it. We will cover that when we talk about nat banat. The Ashkenazim actually have an additional requirement that anything that was cooked in a meat pot should always be placed in a dish.
Okay.
Right. That's halachat. Yeah.
Or parve, but not in the dairy.
Perfect, but not in the dairy. Since it was cooked in a meat pot. Okay.
Even if it's
Rice.
Yeah, like rice, like the example of rice.
Ben yomo cooked in a meat pot, ben yomo should not be eaten out of a dish.
No, not ben yomo is not so much of a problem. We don't have that concern.
If it's yomo,
Yeah. If it's not ben yomo, we don't have that concern. Yeah. All right. Now, as far as, let's go on to the next point. Okay, so we have here an archaka of not having the two together at the same time on the same table. But it appears to be that it's a gzera legzera, one decree to another decree. Ordinarily, we don't enact a decree for another decree. Now, what are the decrees of it? Well, depends how you look at it. One way of looking at it is that you have a decree of lo le'alot, not to put on the table, because you may come to eat it. Right? And then don't do that with chicken because you may do that with meat. You follow? So usually we don't do two decrees. In other words, we're gozer. We're concerned that we're going to have two things here. This may lead to this, and this may lead to that. That's too much. It's a hashash rachok. Why don't we do gzera legzera? Ilan, you remember this? What's the problem with gzera legzera? It's just too much. You know, I mean, we're going to be concerned indefinitely. It has to be reasonable. So one gzera is reasonable. Two gzerot is a little bit too much. The other way of looking at it is it's not a gzera. If you don't look at it as, if you don't use off over here, we use the basar as the Rashba uses the example. No, it's still a gzera legzera in a sense, because it's not. No. I didn't mean that way. I meant that the concern is not the achila of the basar, because the achila of the basar is the Rabbanan. The gzera is from the off directly to the deoraita. So therefore, it's going to be one gzera. So there are various opinions who learn that in reality here we don't have a gzera, you have one gzera. Either, let me see if I remember who it was. All right, you have the Taz. The Taz here points out, even though if you eat it, you won't have an isur d'oraita. שאין איסור אלא דווקא דרך בישול יחד, only if you cook them, ונמצא דהווה גזירה לגזירה. בגמרא אומרים את בחיי גבנה גזירים גזירה לגזירה. They're especially machmir in basar b'chalav. This would be an exception to be extra careful. I think Tosfot points out something like that too. Ken. Yeah. In the maskana. Right. Right. Right.
And then shayach b'basar that we don't have gzera because we are doing one gzera.
No, but anyway, but the Taz, as others would hold, this is an exception. You're right. This is a gzera. If you start off with the hala'ah, right? If that's how you start off with it, that the first gzera is to put them on the table together, and the next one is of course with the basar. Yes, here we're concerned. It's basar b'chalav. We're concerned, as the Taz points out. Crazy Place, I think, also says something similar. Pri Megadim really says that you don't have to say it's a gzera, it's all one, and he really is medayik that, I think, from Rashi. If you look at Rashi, the lashon there is shegazu ala'at basar of atu ha'alat ve'achilat basar behema. So combining the language of achila and ha'ala and achilat behema means that if you put chicken on the table, you may eventually put meat on the table, and guess what? If you put meat on the table, you are going to eat it. In other words, he holds that the ha'ala and the achila of behema is really one thing. So you don't have two gzerot, you really have one extended gzerah here, that from the putting the chicken on the table, you may come to put and eat, or cook the meat with the milk. All right. The Ran, I believe, says, I didn't see it inside, somebody brings down the Ran, that the whole gzera of ahalat of is in order to be mekayim, the gzera of achilat of. If we would allow to put chicken on the table, the gzera of not eating them would weaken. That's what he says, in other words. The whole gzera of not putting them on the table, the whole isur, is to be mekayem, the gzera of achilat, of isur achilat of בחלב. In other words, it's to protect it even more, because it would lose its effect if you allow it to be on the table at the same time. Not everybody would take it seriously. Somehow the Rashba focuses only on the isur d'oraita part, not on the isur d'Rabbanan, and therefore he says that the whole problem is not because of achila d'Rabbanan, as I told you. It has nothing to do with the isur of achila. It's only because of the isur bishul d'oraita. So it's not a gzera like gzera. We're concerned that by putting these things on the table, you may eventually come to the actual isur d'oraita. Says there's no question here about the achila. So it's very similar to, I think, what the Pri Megadim was saying in different words, that the main concern here is the ultimate isur d'oraita. And so if that's the case, it's not a real gzera like gzera. It's just one gzera. All right, so that's as far as the halacha of putting cheese and chicken, or milk and chicken, and so forth, or meat, depending which one you're having for dinner. Regardless, one would be asur because it may lead to the other. What about if it's not milk and meat? What if it's basar nevela? I cannot picture somebody having basar nevela in his kitchen on the same countertop on the same table. But it could be that there's a scenario. I'll tell you what the scenario is. This could be either the goy, the employee at work, making his own food. You shouldn't use your microwave, by the way. You shouldn't use his. Or this could be in a park where people are barbecuing next to each other, and may want to use the same table to place their food on top. So the Shach discusses this. He says the halacha of harchaka in of, chalav, basar, and chalav, and so forth on the same table does not apply to other isurim. We're not that concerned that there may be a problem. People will maintain the distance. You will not come to eat his food. As we will see the next seif, next time, that if people do not know each other, they're not comfortable with each other, they're not going to share food. So he holds that it would be mutar. Not everybody agrees with him, but that's pretty much the halacha, that there's no such concern. There's no such isur, you can't put him on the table. However, in chametz, there are some, I think the Rashba is the one that is very machmir on chametz. It says, because the isur of chametz is so serious, that we don't let the goy eat his chametz lunch next to you, on the same table. A little bit of that chametz, even a little bit of that chametz can come onto your food. It would be a problem. And chametz is also b'mashu, so we're strict about it. Obviously, it can happen. First of all, you shouldn't let him use chametz into your house to begin with. Even if it's his own chametz, it's not your chametz. Still, it's in your house. Right? Then you have to clean up after him. There's a lot of problems with chametz. So therefore, the Rashba says it would be asur, but from the Shach, he seems to argue that we don't have to be machmir on chametz, because the problems that apply in basar b'chalav really don't apply over here. Nevertheless, I think everybody is machmir when it comes to chametz. Obviously, keep away from it. Okay, what's interesting about this halacha, for those who learn Taaruvos, is that in Siman Tzadik Hey of Taaruvos, we learned a very interesting halacha. We learned Siman Tzadik. One second, was it Tzadik? No, I'm sorry, not in Halacha Taaruvos. Tzadik Hey is in Basar b'chalav. I should correct that. It's in Tzadik Hey. I thought it was Tzadik Ches. Tzadik Hey is in Hilchos Basar B'Chalav. Later on, the Mechab in Sif Vav. The Mechaber's Sif Hey. And Vav. Okay, first let's do Vav. Mutar litem betoch teva kad shel basar etzel shel chalav. Later on, the Mechaber says you're allowed to put in a box a jar of, or he says kad, let's call it a jar of meat next to milk. When would this happen? You're going shopping. Can you put the two in one basket, in one carton, in one bag, and take it home? Meat and milk. He says, yeah. The Ramah says, "V'yesh machmirin lechatchila." You're better off being careful if you don't really need to have them close to each other. So some are machmir. So the Shach says, why machmir? It's only because we're concerned that you may one may spill over to the next one. That's the only problem. Therefore, if they're closed, sealed, it's not a problem. And therefore, the lechatchila chumro, he would only be bemegulim. Right? The Taz says, the basarim chalav zehiri inshi shelo yipol mizeh lezeh. Why can you put them to begin with, according to the Mechaber, in the same box? Because people are careful. It's interesting. Here he says people are careful not to mix the two together. But this is not on the table. That's the difference. You're not eating. We don't have that concern. Here it's just putting the two together. People are going to put a separation between the two of them. Now, in the Seif before that, he says, En manichin kli sheyesh bo kutach etzel kli sheyesh bo melach. But if it's a kli that has a dairy dish, kutach is dairy, you don't put it next to a dish that has salt. But you could put it next to vinegar. Now, what's the problem putting it next to salt? Anything that may have dairy in it, because if any of the dairy falls into the salt, and you don't realize it by mistake, you may use that salt to salt meat, and it has dairy in it. So because of that possibility, that you don't do into salt, you don't do. But in vinegar, it doesn't apply. You're not going to use the vinegar for that. So basar and chalav in their jar, people are careful. But with the kutach, people may not be careful. Either you'll put it into a dish, that's salt, or you use it to salt meat. So that's going to be a problem. So interesting, over there, in Siman Tzadik Hey, we see that you can put them next to each other. No problem having them next to each other, especially if they're closed. So this, where this applies? In a refrigerator. You have to be careful when you put away your chicken from Shabbat, you put away your cholent, you put away meat dishes from dinner. You have your milk, you have your dairy dishes, one may spill into the other. Right, sof zetzonen, it's all cold. So you can rinse it out. But still, you want to be careful. Put it, either close it, put it in a separate spot, put it in the door of the fridge, don't put it close. Some people separate dairy from meat even in the fridge. That's good, you can do that. You don't have to. As we see from this Siman in Tzadik Hey, from the Seif in Tzadik Hey, that you can put them close to each other because people are going to be extra careful. Hopefully they're going to be closed and not open, right? So they're not going to spill onto each other. But these things may happen. So therefore the Ramah was machmer over there. Ramah says if you can avoid it, don't put them too close to each other. Obviously if there's some space, then for sure it's okay. Okay, so that's why we will understand the second half of our Seif Aleph over here in the Siman. If this is not a table where you're eating, if this is a table which is like a countertop, sudar alav atafshil, all you're doing is placing food next to each other, you're not eating, you're not sitting down to have, then that would be okay. Like the Kaf HaChaim explains, that here the Ramah doesn't even say anything. Because obviously, what are we talking about? We're talking about that there's enough distance over here. She'en lachush, shema yishafech. We don't have to be concerned that one may spill into the other. They're on the same countertop. There's enough space in between them. We're not concerned. Or they're covered. As opposed to the other case with the salt. This would be different. Anyway, there are various other shelot that have come up that the poskim speak about that are not, I don't know if they're very, very relevant, but they raise the question of whether if you had meat, can you sit down next to somebody, you already finished your meal, can you sit down or stand next to somebody who's having a dairy dinner? Are we concerned you may come to eat from his food? Would that be a similar concern? Like, when you have the two at the same table, or not? Obviously, we're not that makbid in that kind of a situation that a person may. Or what about if you ate meat? This is much more shayach. You just had steak for dinner. And now you're in the mood of making cheesecake. Are we concerned you may come to taste from the cheesecake? As we will be learning in the next Siman, the other issue of time, right? 6 hours between meat and milk. In other words, after you've had to wait 6 hours. So what if you just had meat? Can you handle cheese? Can you make a cheesecake? Can you make cheese? Are we concerned that you may come to taste from it? It's an interesting question. The halacha is there's no such isur, there's no such harchaka. The Chacham didn't make such an additional harchaka for you may come now to eat, because that in itself, the eating of one after another is only a derban, and there's some that don't even require that many hours. You see? So it's not that much of an issue as it is over here. Here, we're talking about something legitimate. As we will see the next seif next time, that what if two people are sitting for dinner at the same time? One wants to have pizza, one wants to have meat. Can they eat? They're separate, they're not the same person. Each one is having his own. Each one is minding his own business. Each one has his own set of dishes and cutlery. But they're eating at the same table, they may come to share. Or will they eat from the same things? Will they, exchange food? These are the concerns of the next seif. Obviously, it all depends. If they know each other, they don't know each other. If there's a heker, if there's something that they put on the table to make a separation for them, or not. Obviously, this is also a concern, and this does happen sometimes. We separate. As we're going to see, we have separate salt shakers, separate salt and pepper for dairy and meat for that purpose. And we do separate plate. We put separate placemats.
I mean, salt shaker even without salt in it.
Oh, what do you know? Why should you have a salt shaker?
Salt would absorb the steam.
Okay.
Problem.
Yeah. No, we'll see. Yeah. No, the problem is with the using it for the two.
That's what I'm saying. Even if there's no salt, the salt itself is a problem.
The salt is a problem, right? Anyway, and of course, bottles, soda or whatever it is that you may be drinking, and you share them in the meal. There is always that possibility that somebody by mistake may take from the table, if there's a dish there, and not know that this is dairy. By the way, there's another halacha, which eventually we will learn. You cannot make dairy bread. Were you aware of it? You have a bread maker, you'd love to make bread. Many of the recipes, or many of the bags that are bought in the store contain dairy ingredients. So you can't make it. You cannot make a dairy bread because you may come to eat bread. Bread is something that is eaten with all kinds of meal. So therefore there's a special halacha of not making dairy bread. Unless, of course, there are a few exceptions. It's a special shape or it's such a small amount that you will be able to consume it in one meal. And that's regarding certain cookies or food items that may be eaten either with dairy or with meat, that we have that concern. So there are ways around it. If do something to it that you will not be confused. So we see from all of these halachas that there is always that possibility that people may make a mistake of not realizing that they're taking something really that is dairy and they're eating, or something that has meat in it, or they're eating dairy, especially if it's camouflaged, disguised, something else. You don't know. And even though, what's interesting is that even though many of these are only surei d'Rabbanan, we're talking about eating here, we're not cooking. We're not even talking about cooking. And this is not even a problem of that you may come to cook. Totally not. It's just an archaka. As the Rambam points out, that even in the Isur d'Rabbanan of chicken, there's the additional harchaka of not having chicken with milk together. Even if you ignore the other possibility, the ultimate, bishul d'oraisa. Even without that, you also have the issue of that the Chachamim wanted us to stay away from that, because there's always that possibility that you may come to eat two together. And of course, in Basar b'cholav, as Ilan pointed out, they were more machmir than with the rest of them. And that's why, all of these halachas, when people want to kasher the kitchen, or you want to know if you should eat by somebody's home, There's many things that are to be considered. They know the halachas of basar v'chalav. They don't buy treif meat. They don't mix the two together. But perhaps they didn't realize they use the same sink to wash the dishes together. There's so many questions relating that even though it may not be a deoraita, there are chumras, right and left.
No problem.
What do you mean not a problem?
במקום אחד יש כלים.
Sure, it's a problem. You hot water falling, your dishes, the two dishes together. Yeah. Obviously, if it's not together, it's less of a problem, right? So people may not be familiar with all the halachas. Or if they have a maid bichlai, there are some maids that know more than the owner because they work somewhere else. So they're more better experts in what is permissible and what not. But otherwise, these are quite a few things that one has to be careful in the kitchen. Whether it's the Rabbanan or the right, it makes no difference here. It's a halacha. It's a halacha. It's an isser to do certain things in a certain way. Obviously, if by mistake two people were eating in the table, they have meat and they had dairy, but they were careful, okay, nothing happened, Baruch Hashem. But the whole idea here is to prevent, to make sure that things don't happen. That is what this halacha is for. We follow the speed limit because we don't want certain things to happen, chas v'shalom. This is the whole idea. All the gzerot of the chachamim were intended for a very good reason, because they knew, they've seen it, that people make mistakes. It has happened many, many times. People made a mistake of eating something that was not kosher. They forgot to look at if there was an OU or an OK, or they forgot to check the ingredients. They said, it's okay. It could have been okay last year. It's no longer okay now. Even the same product. I always tell my wife, always check it. It looks exactly identical like the other one. Yeah, but it's a different company. You see how it is? You have to be careful. The Chachamim realize that people make the mistakes, and that is why, of course, they told us, you have to stay away from it. Okay.